Mr. Speaker, I'm very pleased to stand and commend this bill to the House.
Mr. Speaker.
David Clark.
Mr. Speaker, let's see if I can outlast the chair of the committee who shepherded this bill through Parliament with great care and dignity. I guess that no one can accuse him of hypocrisy, Mr. Chair, because this bill, which has great principles in it, is being passed through. He's supporting it, but he's not going any further than that. He's not explaining why. He's not getting into the detail. He's not contrasting it with the government's current behaviour in the way that my colleague Clayton Cosgrove has so eloquently done, as he so eloquently does. I want to speak a little bit about the public sector management principles that sit behind this bill, and I can actually hear people turning their TV sets off as I say that. I will try to make it vaguely entertaining as it can be, Mr. Chair. This is a bill. This bill isn't particularly exciting. It has to be said. It's not the bright lights kind of thing. Ms. Tolley says no, it's not. But it is actually exciting for those entities affected by it. It is exciting that accountability, where it's unnecessary, is being done away with. And where it is required, where there's a public interest angle, where an entity is too big to fail without having ripples through the community, proper and clear accountability is being required. And as my colleague Clayton Cosgrove has contrasted the government's behaviour inside this place and in their deals with the expectations of those who are outside in the business world, I want to bring another example to the table, and that is the example of the ag research restructure that is going on currently. They have brought a proposal which they've put to the shareholding ministers, Minister Stephen Joyce and Bill English, which they've signed off on, called the business case for the future footprint plan for ag research. It's based around an idea that you cluster things together, you get hubs of activity, and that it is more productive. Nothing wrong with that as a general principle. Broadly, it's been agreed with. It's been agreed with in the reviews inside the organisation that those principles are good ones. But what hasn't happened has been a transparent process around assessing whether that's what's really achieved in the restructuring proposal. That is not what's achieved, argue three separate reports that have come out subsequently. The executive leadership team, very close connections there into the Minister's office, have defended the current plan, which was signed off by the Minister. Now, the Minister may be embarrassed because the original plan seems to lack some good principles behind it in terms of the way the different options have been compared. It was very detailed, so we know Mr. Joyce had the plan for about 6 months. He received it on the 31st of October last year and had it on his desk till at least the end of March. He must have worked through all those details of how many jobs were going to be lost in Dunedin and thereabouts, how many jobs were going to go out of Hamilton, and the member David Bennett opposite must be furious at the way the Ag Research Centre there is being gutted by Stephen Joyce without going through a proper process. Maybe he's just rolling over and letting his belly be scratched, I don't know. But if I was him, I would be furious because Minister Joyce is steamrolling this ideological vision through without having a transparent process and without having the proper business case requirements that the Treasury would demand. And again, there we see a level of hypocrisy. When the government, when the government commits itself to a deal, it puts transparency to one side. In this bill, we are seeing that everybody is required to comply to transparent processes if it's in the public interest, except the behaviour of this government. That is the record that we're seeing. One rule for everyone else and one rule for the national government. And on the Invermay debacle, we've had many independent investigations, 3 now. Well, one was an internal review which said you've got these objectives but you're not meeting them, Invermay Ag Research, by breaking up the Invermay cluster in Dunedin. There is a productive hub there. There is private enterprise. There are productivity gains, a huge history of productivity gains which are extraordinary in New Zealand terms, which contribute to our agricultural sector, so important as it is. And in fact, you've got the whole omics, genomics and so forth cluster there, which is working effectively, could be work more effectively. In fact, if you transferred more resource into it, that would be good for New Zealand. That would actually achieve your goals. But it seems at this stage that the government's wedded to it. Although Minister Joyce does say he is going to look at more detail, he has asked for more detail, and I commend him on that. A little bit disappointing, perhaps, that the National Party list member who lives in Dunedin hasn't been out there putting the pressure on publicly on Minister Joyce to look at those things carefully. There has been no statement. There's been silence from the list member who is based in Dunedin. And that is disappointing. Well, I expect him to take a call. He's saying rubbish. And so I look forward to his rebutting that. But it's been... I certainly haven't heard the echoes of his complaints through the media. So I will listen with interest, and I will look to the newspapers for criticism as those jobs are ripped out of Dunedin, as those jobs which benefit New Zealand's economy. The productivity of our country is dependent on good science and good research. This government seems determined to run a non-transparent process, in that case to rip out that functional hub in the south, and it is doing harm to New Zealand. Let's put aside the regional interest. It is doing harm to New Zealand in doing that. But when it's ideologically wedded, be it a casino deal, be it a Rio Tinto golden handshake, be it a chorus sorted out behind the scenes where it's a big business and corporate welfare, this government is willing to do the deal with its ideological blinkers on. It doesn't matter that the electricity sector, for example, had that history of price gouging that I referred to in the committee stages, where $4.3 billion of price gouging was identified between 2001 and 2007. Simon Bridges says the current market model works. It just needs a little more time to bed in. I think that's an exact quote. It just needs a little more time to bed in. 15 years down the track, this government is not prepared to stand up and say when something is not working. They are too early to tell. We will wait and see. But not the Labor government. The Labor government of the future will step in. It will make sure that we regulate the power market so that it's run in the interests of New Zealand citizens, so that people do not pay too much for their power, so we don't have blackouts across the country. Those are the kinds of things that this government will tolerate in the interest of making sure that the asset sale-offs go, that the money goes offshore, that their mates are looked after. They're ideologically wedded to it. They won't even look at the New Zealand power model so well championed by the Labor Party, and also a variant thereon by the Green Party across down the back of the house there. And unfortunately, this government's so wedded to this ideological position. It's one thing for them and their deals, the way they do their business. They're expecting in this bill the citizens of New Zealand to do something different. It's a pity they can't take their own advice. It's a pity they can't apply those simple principles that I referred to in the outset, the public sector management principles, clear objectives, transparent reporting, sanctions and rewards, and clear lines of accountability. Those kind of simple principles which we find embodied in this bill, which looks out for the public interest, seem too far beyond this government for it to adopt itself. And that is a great shame, because this government, if it applied these principles to its own practice, would be acting in the interests of New Zealanders more broadly. But no, they seem to be out of touch. They seem to be increasingly arrogant. We saw the dismissals of the EQC Auditor General's report. We saw the dismissals of the Crown Retail Deposit Guarantee Scheme Auditor's report. We see the dismissals of the Law Society's advice on the GCSB bill, saying slow down, have a clear process, have some clear oversight of the agency, have a proper review, for goodness sake. But no, this government doesn't want scrutiny, doesn't want review. It says this is not for it, this is for the people of New Zealand, but it's not for us. We're a government who are not interested in the wider public interest where it applies to us. We'll do our own thing. This is a government out of touch with New Zealanders, out of time, and New Zealanders will be well advised to get rid of them at the next election. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Julianne Gento.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a pleasure to take a call in the last 15 minutes at 1:45 midnight.